Hello, I'm about to turn onto Highway 22 at the traffic circle in, well, I should call it a roundabout, in Killdeer, North Dakota. I was headed up north to Stanley, North Dakota for a cross-country meet, and I was just reminded how beautiful this trip is through the Killdeer Mountains. So I'm putting this up in lieu of my ordinary pens and use because I just didn't get to it. But here we're coming in through Killdeer, North Dakota, which when I moved to the state was smaller than the town where I live. I'll say my town still has a better main street, but Killdeer has passed us in size thanks to oil. You'll see a lot of oil on this trip, a lot of oil traffic. Not so much the damage to the roads that was visible the last time I took this trip because they've repaired a lot of that and hardened up the roads a bit. But you will see a lot of that. If you watch the full driving footage, which will be out eventually, you'll see a lot of flaring and stuff, which you actually don't normally see in North Dakota because there are some state laws about flaring, but let's just say that because of where I'm traveling through, some of these laws can be skirted more easily. Also, it's very rugged territory, so it's kind of hard to build the infrastructure to deal with the gas that gets flared off. We're coming up on the Killdeer School, which you can barely see off to your left. That is, well, they've just hired a third science teacher. They've had to do a lot of hiring, and they're struggling a bit with size and trying to think, oh, what do we do? Do we add on? Do we build new? You know, they're at that point. Killdeer is also a town that bought housing for teachers because it was getting kind of expensive for teachers to live in this town. That's kind of been ameliorated a bit just because the oil boom has backed off because the price of oil has dropped. So what I'm doing is I'm just jumping around. This is further north of Killdeer on Highway 22. Again, we're in the Killdeer Mountains. You can see a mountain in the background. And I know if you're from Pennsylvania or if you're from the Rockies or the Himalayas or anywhere where there's real mountains, you're looking at that going, that's a hill. Okay, more properly, it's a butte or whatever, but, you know, they call them the Killdeer Mountains. It's basically Badlands, but more rugged than where I live and a little more forested. And we have forest down here, but it's a different sort. And this is a beautiful drive. I will admit this wasn't the most photogenic time of year to do it, but, you know, here I was, so I went. And, yeah, I'm following an oil truck. We're passing oil trucks going the other way. It's all over up here. Makes me glad I don't live there. And here we're actually headed down into the Little Missouri River Valley. Now, Little Missouri River also passes close to me. It's not quite this dramatic where I live, although it is quite stunning where I live. But this is, wow. And that's why I kept an extended clip of the whole thing. I just wanted you to see what the Badlands are like up here. Oh, I guess it wasn't so extended. But anyway, the blue sign coming up here, because we're still about to drop into the valley, is to announce a pull-off so trucks can put on chains. Yeah, it's that kind of road. For North Dakota, pretty steep. I want to say it was a 9% grade, something like that. It was a single digit anyway. But with the kind of weather we get here, you might want your chains on when you travel this route. At the other end of it, there's another place to pull off to take off your chains. When you're driving a Toyota Camry, chains don't make so much sense, so I don't have chains for the Camry. My philosophy is if it's that bad, I'm just going to stay home, because you know what? I walk to work. I live in a small town. I can walk everywhere. So I just won't make the trip. You know, I'll drive in some bad weather just because it is North Dakota, and it's kind of a thing where you have to sometimes, but it's not my first choice. So yeah, here we are on the starting down that 9% grade. I'm pretty sure one of the signs we passed here announced that. And you can see the kind of landscape the Killdeer Mountains have. I did a little color correcting so it looked more like what my eyes were seeing. And I'm pretty happy with the results. You know, investing in this new dash cam, which I guess isn't so new anymore, really made a difference to the quality of these driving videos. And learning how to do a little color correcting has really helped a lot. And you can also see that there was some rain. I was talking to the bus driver that took the cross-country team up a little earlier than I was there. He actually drove up in the rain, and he said he was going to have to get some washer fluid for the bus on the way home because he drove up in the rain and all this oil traffic splashed mud and stuff all over the bus, and he had to clean the windshield constantly and was no longer able to do so. So hopefully he was able to refill that before he headed home. You know, that little piece of music I opened this with is designed for looping, and I don't know, it's one I was trying out. I liked it. I heard it on, a YouTube show that's not related to anything I do. Well, maybe tangentially, Objectively Dan. But anyway, I really liked it, and I thought that would be a neat piece of music to just loop while I run this, and you know, I like Sayonara as my music for my shows, but I thought maybe it would find a place in somewhere, but I don't know, here I am talking. But we're looking down in the Little Missouri River Valley. It's surrounded by badlands, of course. This is rugged territory. Perhaps you can see why it is difficult to lay the infrastructure for dealing with the gas that gets flared by oil drilling. Same time, boy, all that energy and carbon, carbon going into the air, the energy being wasted. Yeah, I know when you first start an oil well, you kind of have to flare, but doggone it, that is such a waste of natural gas. So anyway, down here in the river bottom, it's flat. I imagine over history the river wandered back and forth. That little marker that off to the side there just mentions that the bridge over the river wasn't built until, was it the 50s or 60s? I can't remember. But the important thing is, there was no way to get from Killdeer to north. And why? Well, part of it has to do with not many people up here back then. The other part, the people up here were Native American. Let's just be honest. That was a big piece of it. Because yes, we're on a reservation right now. To be specific, it's the Fort Berthold, or Three Affiliated Tribes reservation, and the three affiliated tribes would be the Mandan, the Hidatsa, and the Arikara. I never have had much to do with this reservation. I did teach on a different one for a while, but the one where I taught was Sioux. So I don't know much history about this reservation, I'll just be honest. I followed a lot with the reservation where I taught, and I know a bit about some of the others, but honestly, this one is close, but I don't know much about it. But wow, they have some gorgeous scenery on their reservation, and you can see why. And again, I may be getting a little political here. You can see why they were given this land to be their reservation, because you can't really farm this. You can somewhat ranch it, but it's so rugged and awful that nobody really wants it. Beautiful. There's wildlife in it and so on. And then it turns out in the 20th century that, oh yeah, there's a lot of oil under it. And I don't know this, but it must make for some interesting dynamics. Just talking, well, of course you would have heard about the Standing Rock Reservation protests and their opposition to a pipeline. The attitude up here is a little bit different because they are financially benefiting from it. Financially, in terms of population, they're just benefiting a lot from having all this oil. And now I'm realizing that the scenes I selected for this video were more for their scenic value rather than for illustrating the whole oil thing. So, sorry about that. I have an upcoming video on an Esterbrook, and I got an interesting comment from a viewer who noted that Esterbrook donated a bunch of pens to Indian boarding schools, which is what they were called back then. And I don't know the history on this reservation. Again, I know the reservation where I taught. There's an ugly, ugly history of Indian boarding schools, and nationally that's a pretty shameful topic. Dark part of American history that doesn't get talked about enough. But anyway, I don't really remember where I was headed with it, but I think my main thing was a lot of the problems with reservations and how we treated our native population are still visible on this reservation. It's somewhat hidden behind the prosperity that oil has brought, but I will be taking you through Mandaree, North Dakota, which is in a gorgeous setting, and perhaps you'll get a hint of some of the issues. Wow, that is quite a view. I'm sorry. Nice view here. But anyway, taking you through Mandaree might give you some idea of the issues. I'm always hesitant when I go through an area like that, and when I talk about a story that's not mine. You know, I'm not Native American. I'm one of the oppressors, basically. And you can argue back and forth about what do we do now. It's not like we're all going back to Europe, but you know, the way the United States was formed, we took the land from the people that were here. It's that simple. You know, realistically, we're not all going back to Europe or Africa or wherever we're from. But I think that's a piece of history we need to remember. And the legacy of that still lives on in most reservations. One of these days, I'm going to take you through the reservation where I taught, and I'd like to delve into that topic a little more deeply. I'm only doing very surface, limited research type exploration of it right now because, again, I was just going to throw music to this and let her rip, aside from my brief introduction, but here I am, still talking, 12 minutes into the video, so I guess this isn't going to be a music video. And again, I'm talking about an ugly history against this absolutely gorgeous countryside. I think it would be really cool to call someplace like this home, but then I also think you're pretty far away, you're pretty isolated, and there are the other issues there that you have to deal with. So that's me talking as an outsider. And I would love to hear Native American voices talk about what it's like to live here, what it's like to live on the reservation. All right, so we jumped ahead a number of miles here to Newtown, North Dakota, so named because when the Missouri River was dammed up, several towns were flooded out. Again, mostly Native American, and a new town was created for all the people that lived in those towns, and Newtown is that town. Newtown has a casino, which I'm not a gambler, so I was in it once for a wedding reception, but didn't stay very long. It's just not an environment I like. Four Bears Casino and Lodge, if you're interested. And you can see parts of the old bridge there, but we're going to go across the new bridge, which crosses Lake Sakakawea, which is what was created by damming up the Missouri River. We're kind of at the far end of it from the dam. The actual dam is near Garrison, North Dakota. I actually have a video tour of it. It's one of my least viewed videos, but whatever. You know, I used to try to do travelogues around North Dakota where I just talk about various places I was visiting, but not many people ever watched those. I didn't post them real regularly, and way too many of them ended up being deleted later because I realized, oh, I used copyrighted music. Whoops! And no, the music that opened this was not copyrighted. It's under a Creative Commons license. But we're headed into Main Street, Newtown. Newtown has, right at the moment, about 2,500 people. It's another town that used to be about the size of mine, but thanks to oil, really grew. And you'll see the main street is kind of interesting. I don't know if I've seen another town with a main street like this. You've got your main drag through town, which I'm on. But then there's what do you call them, service roads or whatever, to the sides, access roads, or maybe that's a better word, to the sides where all the parking is for the businesses, except right here, of course. But it's coming. And I guess that's so traffic can get through more easily, but just makes it more difficult for pedestrians, I guess. I don't know. I'm sure it's so traffic could just shoot through and didn't have to watch out for people or stop for pedestrians or whatever. Except, don't pedestrians walk across here? There's crosswalks, so I just don't get it. But I'm sure it made sense when they laid out Newtown. I don't know. I had to get gas here in Newtown also at forget what it is. Newtown has a small community college. They have a high school. It's just kind of the hub of local activity. But I headed north of Newtown to a town called Stanley. I don't have a lot of footage of Stanley. Just be honest. Pretty up there, but in my earlier, this is the Montreal County Courthouse. My earlier driving around Stanley, I thought, wow, a lot of new houses here. 2,600 people. It used to be a town of about the size of mine. Again, 1,500 people, but they grew. Thank you, oil. A lot of those towns up there did. So, we got enough oil down here to keep us stable. And I'm happy with that. Now, a town this size, I can't object too much, except I know how it is. They don't grow the businesses on Main Street. They don't grow the businesses you can walk to. They just, hey, let's build some stuff outside town, so you have to drive in your car to get to everything. And I don't like that. We're going to cruise down Stanley's Main Street. I will say it was a fairly healthy-looking Main Street, so kudos for that. I don't know. I should probably go up there and just spend more time in Stanley. Maybe do a Pens on the Road. Stay overnight or something. It's small compared to most of the towns I've done Pens on the Road with, but, why not? But, in editing the footage, I just thought, this is worth sharing just so you can kind of get an idea what Stanley is like. Like my town, they have a Ford dealer right on Main Street. Actually, our Ford dealers spread all over with various lots and garages everywhere. So, they're trying to keep that Main Street presence, and at the same time, they're a growing business. So, yeah, and some residential area. Not truly residential because this is on the highway, but at least gives you an idea. Actually, I used to think years and years ago, before all the oil and everything, Stanley was a very pretty town. And, with the leaves off and everything, you're not really seeing it. But it still has its charms. But there's a lot of highway junk and, out-of-town businesses that you can't walk to that have taken care of some of that attractiveness. But, when you grow quickly, that's kind of what happens. And towns in the United States just don't have a long history, and that's what you get. Headed south out of Stanley, North Dakota. I'm actually quite a ways south of Stanley by now. Down Highway 8, about to join up with Highway 23, which will take me back through Newtown, North Dakota. Now, we're not going to look at Newtown all over again, but you can see Lake Sakakawea off in the distance, made out of Little Missouri out of the Missouri River by a dam at Garrison, North Dakota. And I'll try to remember to put a link to the video, either in the video description or one of those little eye thingies up in the corner of the screen. It's not an amazing video, but at least you get to see what the dam is all about. And again, Newtown was made out of a bunch of towns that no longer exist. But I kept this footage just because you could see the lake. And here I am. This is one of the bays off of Lake Sakakawea as I I'm west of Newtown now on Highway 23, and I kept this footage in because it was a great prelude to one of the better scenes of the bridge at the casino that I've ever seen in person. And I just really felt like all of this built up suspense for it. And I'll just mention that it was a cross-country meet I was up in Stanley for. I don't travel for other sports. I've traveled a total of 10 miles to watch a football game. But other than that, I don't travel for sports. But cross-country, it's just about impossible to see locally, because the only cross-country meet we have locally, except when we host regionals, is when I'm working. So I drive, and I love it, because I get to see neat places. It's all outdoors, and cross-country is kind of an audience participation event, because you have to run around the course to find the runners, and then take pictures, of course. And I just, oh, look at those leaves, wow. But I just enjoy that. You know, this golf course in Stanley was a new one on me. It's a new one on the kids, new one on the coach, new one on everybody. I guess they don't host too many cross-country meets there, but it was supposed to be hosted at Newtown, but their golf course was, I don't know if it was flooded or if it had some other, the Stanley one had some flooding too, but at least we could get around it. And usually by now I've been to a few cross-country meets, but this year every one I was able to get to got canceled thanks to weather. So I got to one this year, so at least I got that. You know, I take pictures, the kids get to have the pictures, tag them with their names so I can create a little, I don't know, Michael Voorhees gallery for Michael Voorhees. Not a comment on my students, that's just the first name that popped into my head that wasn't a student. So here's the bridge, the new bridge. I just loved this. You know, maybe if I would have pulled off, I would have liked it even more and taken a picture with the real camera, but, you know, that shadow of the bridge, the beautiful scenery, the great lighting, a scratched and pitted windshield on a 20-year-old car. Probably not the best canvas for that view, but yeah, I enjoyed that view very much. I've rewatched that particular scene a few times just because I was like, whoa, I like that. So I'm going to turn here. I'm back on Highway 22 headed south toward Killdeer. I'm going to turn here into a Mandaree, North Dakota. It's a town of about 600. It's actually not really a town. It's called a census-designated place. The first time I was in Mandaree was probably 15 or 16 years ago. I was exploring the Killdeer Mountains with a lady that I knew, and realized that, oh shoot, the car's kind of out of gas. It wasn't the Camry, it was back when I was still driving a Geo Prism, which, you know, quite the lady killer car there. But anyway, so she said, well, at Mackenzie Bay in Mandaree, there's gas. So, Mandaree, it says C-store and so on. I pulled over here, by the way, because the sheriff drove by me at high speed with flashing lights. And you know, that horrible moment you're scared they're coming after you, but then you realize, nope, no, they're not. But anyway, so I bought the most expensive gas I've ever purchased in my life at Mackenzie Bay. I think the usual customers for that gasoline are the people with boats trying to fill up their little boat motor. So filling up a Geo Prism with that was incredibly expensive. I want to get back out to Mackenzie Bay someday, though. I've always thought that, and never have. It was very beautiful. I mean, Badlands coming right down to Lake Sakakawea. So this view normally is not so green this time of year. Usually it's brown, but we've had such a wet year with ridiculous amounts of snow already. So you get to see it green, I guess. But yeah, this is where Mandaree is located. Mandaree doesn't look like most towns, but it does look a lot like some other census-designated places I visited. on Native American reservations. I turned here because I was curious to see about the school. Apparently, they're building a new high school. I did not see the sign, but the cross-country coach noticed the sign on his way up to Stanley, out by the highway, that's going to be the site of the new Mandaree High School. So that's interesting. Especially, when you see this school, it's, not the most modern school, but it's in good shape, and it's definitely had some very modern additions to it. But I suppose they have some oil money, and I would imagine that the enrollment is up just because of families in the area, thanks to oil. And, I think most of those people end up in Newtown, but I'm sure some of the overflow end up in places like Mandaree. And I don't mean that as a slight. I just mean Newtown just has a lot more and a lot more going on, so it's a lot more likely to attract people than a place like Mandaree. Mandaree has a C-store in it, which I never located. No gas station. And I did go past what looked like a Mexican place. I saw the menu, but I couldn't figure out where the place was. So, there's that. But here we are, pulling up to the high school. I actually know a lady who was, now I'm drawing a blank if she was principal or superintendent here, but anyway, she was one or the other, an administrator anyway, here for a few years. But yeah, it's clearly a 60s type school that's had some additions on it. So, that's probably why they're looking at building a new school. I work in one of those schools, 60s type with some additions. Part of our building even dates from the 50s, but, just how it is. Don't quite match the modern ways of teaching, but at the same time, it's not like teaching has really changed that much. And it should. But I will admit I'm at that age where I struggle to implement some of the changes in teaching. Not an old teacher by any means. I'm kind of at that age where I'm too old to be the cool young teacher and too young to be that old respected teacher. I'm just kind of one of the, why is this guy still here teachers? But anyway, we're, just touring a little bit of Mandaree. There is no center, no main street to speak of, just housing. The C-store is somewhere. I don't know where it is. I never saw it. Other than seeing a sign that there was one, although this is some new housing here. Other than seeing a sign that there was one, I never saw an actual C-store. So, yeah, I don't know. And of course, you have to think, if we don't have local businesses, we're not working in Mandaree. We're working somewhere else and driving. So these are all people who commute. Other than the teachers, of course. I drove up here thinking I was going to the C-store, but no. Unless it was a scary-looking C-store. But, this turned out to be an apartment. And yeah, whatever that is ahead of me. Hit pause and examine it if you're wondering. It was interesting. But anyway, a little view of the Badlands, because at this apartment they do have a nice view. And something is being built down there. I'm not sure what. But then here we are back on Highway 22, headed south. And I'm actually going to take you really close to my territory on this trip. I'm not 100% sure now where this part of Highway 22 is, but I feel like it's south of Killdeer because the countryside isn't that rugged. So it's got to be between Killdeer and Dickinson. Where on Highway 22 that is, I don't know. This is Dickinson. I decided to just do a quick drive through the residential part that's along Highway 22. These are not houses or apartments I'd want to live in because I would imagine the traffic noise is atrocious. And the pulling out of them can't be super fun, but the noise would get me. unless I could make a truly, truly insulated house, which, by the way, that's something I've noticed with a lot of houses in this country. I just think, well, and schools, we need better sound insulation, better sound, and the schools especially, better sound baffling. We just need to better insulate rooms from each other and indoors from outdoors in terms of sound. I think it's a quality of life thing. And you get those people who just, I'm going to run my stereo with bass real loud. And I'm going to make sure I'm deaf by the time I'm 40, but goddamn, wouldn't be cool as a teenager because I got my boom, boom, boom music going on in my car, and it shakes, and you can even feel it shaking you if you're close enough. Yeah, that kind of thing. It's just like, what's the point? And why do you have to share it with everybody else? And the same way with these people that, you're talking to somebody who's right there. Do you have to scream it? Just talk to them in a normal voice. You don't have to be so loud. And I know I'm probably being loud in this video, but that's so the microphone picks it up, because I don't know what kind of speakers you're using, and you can always turn me down because that's what you have volume control for. In fact, I hope you are. I hope you aren't sharing me with everybody under the sun, because they don't all want to hear my random thoughts on Highway 22 and Stanley. Because, nice mural. Yeah, they put murals all around this railroad bridge, so I think that's cool. But anyway, just turn me down. Not everybody has to hear this, and that's one thing I get tired of, is these conversations that, just shut up, just talk to the person by you, don't do it so loud. Here we are on Highway 67. Yeah, we jumped a lot of miles south. And yep, that's snow in the ditch there. Yay. Headed towards Scranton, North Dakota. There was actually a really cool view off to the west of a valley full of fog with the sun shining through it. And I thought, as I drove by it, what a pretty picture. And did I stop to take a photograph? Oh, hell no. And I don't know why. Should have, but I didn't. And I think part of the reason the fog was all this snow that was settling in low places. It had fallen 2-3 days before this. It was the day I drove up Dickinson for my class. I made a post about the community tab. It just hasn't melted yet. Heck, this morning, which is Sunday, the 27th, there's still snow around. New snow even, because some parts of this area got new snow. Yay. You may see something building up way to the south there. That is the grain elevators by Scranton, North Dakota. Not Scranton, Pennsylvania, Scranton, North Dakota. I thought I would just share it. It's a very small town of about 500 or 600 people, probably 500. But anyway, they have some very large grain elevators, a modern water tower. There used to be an old-fashioned water tower right in the middle of the streets where I did some turning, but it's gone now. Again, it kind of makes me wish I'd have been doing these driving videos years ago and had a dash cam, but not feasible. But anyway, Scranton is a pleasant small town. They don't have a whole lot on their main street. They have a good pizza place. There's a place where I had burgers one night that turns out to be a bit of a bar. But yeah, not a lot. There's a grocery store, gas station. I forget what all, but anyway, not a lot. A lot of empty businesses. I've worked in towns this size that have more business, but Scranton struggles because it's between two much larger towns that have a lot more to offer. There's a school. I want to say the enrollment's about 120 kids, K through 12, so very small school if you're into that kind of thing. I once looked at a job here. Didn't end up applying for it, but I looked at a job. That was... How long has that been? Probably 14 years ago I looked at that job. 15, 16, something like that. Somewhere around here is where the water tower was. But anyway, just driving south through Scranton. Looking at some of the residential area. I always like sidewalks like this that are back off the street because then they feel like they're real sidewalks. They don't get full of snow in the winter. But then people park in the middle of them. And the new thing seems to be to put the sidewalk and curb together like this. But then you're right there by the traffic where you can get splashed where, oops, I fell out into the street. Or is that kid going to come out here or what? You know, I like them set further back. But this seems to be the trend. Then you have to shovel it clear every time it snows because snowplow puts it where? Yeah, this is more like what I like. But it would put, on my lot, it would put them really uncomfortably close to the south side of my house. Wow, I'm rambling. Getting tired. But here's Main Street, Scranton. Most of the businesses are closed. There's a hardware store which is closed. Yeah, I mean, they look like businesses just going by them like this, but they're closed. The pizza place, on the other hand, is going to open up a branch in my town. And I'm kind of excited about that. I don't buy pizza that often, but I find it interesting. Fire Hall. When I first visited Scranton, back when they had that job opening that I was thinking about, they had I drove through it. My impression was it felt like a housing development. It didn't feel like a town. This entrance, a bridge over the highway, and back then there was a road to this bridge from either side, and that's gone now. That was not a welcoming way into a town. It just felt like here's this forgotten place off the highway type of thing. I don't know why Scranton's like that. Why we can't just have a road into Scranton other than the railroad that's there. It's just a weird way to get into the town. But anyway, I'm pulling you out to Highway 12. We're looking at the elevators from the south side now. And we're going to head home. And you won't see me head home because I'm going to close it off here pretty quick. But hopefully this makes up a little bit for my fail at a pens and use this week. It's just been the week from hell. I've been so busy. I have not gotten anything done. Finally here on Sunday I am home and taking advantage of it. I've got a lot done. I've still got a lot to do, but I took a break to do this. I was going to batch film a bunch of videos. Didn't get that done, but I've got hopes yet. And this coming week, I'm a little more free to do some batch filming. So, yeah, hopefully we'll be back to my regular schedule this week. So, thank you for watching. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.